Hello everyone, for Tremendous VD, this is Dr. Mead, playing some Duels of the Planeswalkers 2013. Well, actually what we're going to do, I already had forgotten myself, rather than playing a match for this particular video, we're going to take a look through this black deck. I know I said I was going to do this, and now I said I was going to start with Jace, but that was before I turned on Jace and everything he stands for. I was then going to do it with red, but I still haven't unlocked all of the cards for red, and I feel like I need to have the opportunity to talk about every card of the deck, so we'll start with black. And what I'll do is, I guess I'll just add everything in and we'll talk about it. Talk about the cards, one by one, which there's still 13 more. There's a lot of cards in 2013. Okay, so let's start at the bottom. Simplest way to do this. Crippling Blight. This card can help you. The -1/-1 is rarely a factor. It can be helpful. I mean, if they have an early creature that's a little bit too big for you to handle, it can be useful. Obviously, you can use it as hard removal on a 1/1 creature. And can't block. Again, like, this is something that can help you. This is useful against the Fog Bank, theoretically. I generally just prefer to hard remove their creatures that are a problem. I know it's only 1 mana, so that's kind of appealing, but I don't think it's strong enough for this deck, which already has so many hard removal options. Fume Spitter is kind of in the same boat. He's a 1/1 for 1, which is definitely not a deal. And unfortunately, his ability, it seems better. I think it seems better than it is. I think he's a little better than a 1/1 for 1. He's just not great. I don't think this deck needs a 1-drop creature. Frankly, because you have this. This card is amazing. This will get around even problems like Chameleon Colossus. In fact, this is the only way you're going to get rid of the Chameleon Colossus. So it's good to keep this red available if you're playing green. Against other decks, like, this is just a great spot removal. Usually you can afford to give up a creature if you can be certain of getting rid of one of their more dangerous creatures. So I play both copies. I think it's a really good card. Myers Toll. This is a really good card. It costs 1, but you never play with 1 mana because you need multiple swamps for it to be worth it. Otherwise, they're just going to, because the opponent picks which card they reveal to you. So they're just going to have you throw away an island or something if you play this at 1 mana. If you can see their entire hand, obviously you can pull the biggest threat out of it and toss it in the yard, which can be really good, especially since it only costs 1 mana. So you can just kind of throw it in with the rest of your game plan. You may even draw a counter spell out with it, in theory. Although I guess you probably just pitch the counter. If they have something really good, though, I don't know. I don't run it because there's only 1, and it kind of doesn't fit with the theme of the deck. The deck's win conditions are about removing threats from the field, and while this can do that, it's indirect and it's a little slow. I don't know. This is a card, though, that I'd like to fit back in if I can find the space for it. So we'll talk about it maybe later. This guy, the only problem with this guy is that he costs 2. Oh, and the fact that his ability is not optional, so you cannot play him by himself. If the field is open, this guy just clogs your hand, because otherwise he kills himself. And also he costs 2, and so he's just not that good. Exsanguinate is an expensive version of Blaze. I generally use it as a finisher, but since you can gain life with it, it can also save you in mid-game if you're getting pounded. If your opponent is playing a fast deck and they've got a big life advantage on you, this can really turn the game around. 2 black and X. It's unfortunate because it means that you really can't do that much damage until later in the game, unless you get a couple of these on the table. I run 1 Exsanguinate. I do think it's a good card. Yeah. Jet Medallions. Okay, I know some people think that this... I know a lot of people don't like these medallions, especially they don't like to run them in every deck. This is one of the decks where you have to run them. I think this goes in this deck, because the only card that you really there are a lot of black color symbols, but there's not. It's not like green, where everything is just color symbols. The biggest thing in here that we have to worry about getting black for is the Obliterator, and we'll be able to get 4 black, especially with this card in the deck. Since it's mono, you know, I don't think you'll have any problems getting the black mana you need. This, on the other hand, will make things like Exsanguinate cheaper. It'll bring your big creatures in the back end out cheaper, because the way I like to cut this deck, I think this deck needs some of these big scary guys at the end, and all of them benefit from the medallions. There's no phage. There's a lot of colorless symbols back here, so we definitely like the medallions. I think they have to stay in this deck. They are a little clunky. I mean, it doesn't feel like a great play when you lay one, but they help you accelerate. It's not bad at all. Tuco Shade is like the best creature in the deck. Well, okay, probably not the best creature in the deck, but maybe. 2 black, 2/1 pumps. That's it. Very simple card, but this is how the black deck wins, is we have these pump shades who apply so much pressure because your opponent has to make the choice every time. Oh, do I block this, do I block this guy and lose a creature, or do I take 10? Because you'll happily give up other plays and just sit there on your removal if you can out-damage them with a single pump shade. They have to address your pump shades, and if they do, the kill spells in here are going to penalize them right back. So this is an amazing card. The fact that the promo's added another one is psychotic, and I love it. Sign in Blood. Sometimes you use this on the other player, usually as a finisher, or as part of a finishing blow with a Corrupt or whatever. But more often, I use it on myself. Anything that lets you draw cards. This will give you a little bit of card advantage. It does cost 2 life and 2 black, but it's worth it to fill your hand back up with threats, to fish for a swamp when you really need one. I find this card to be pretty clutch. I like it a lot. This guy is not good enough. He's too expensive. He's 3 mana for a 2/2. He is evasive, and he, unlike some of the other unblockable type creatures, he himself can block, but he's 2/2, and we don't have any way to boost him. So, yeah, you can put matches other than the Mirror or Exalted on a clock with this guy, in theory, if you want to spend the 3 mana on him. But with no way to enhance him, since we don't have like Unholy Strength, or I don't know what the new black buff is called, the one that takes 1 life but is +3/+1. And we don't have any way to boost this guy, so this guy just kind of sits around and does nothing. We're going to kill our opponent much more quickly with Pump Shades, even though they don't evade, than we are probably with this guy. He's not a bad card, though. There's nothing wrong with this card. Like, this is it's pretty good. He's just not good enough. He doesn't. I don't have room for him in the deck. But if you like him, then play him. Why not? Infest is mass removal. This card is absolutely devastating for goblins. If the Peacekeepers, there's a very aggressive variant of it that is going to use a lot of tokens. This is anathema to them. This will kill almost all the creatures, the early creatures in red. This will wipe out defenders in either of the blue decks. Basically, this card makes your life a lot easier. You're probably going to lose creatures to it too, unless you just are sitting on a Phyrexian Obliterator or whatever. But it's always worth it. This card has to be in the deck because you need this kind of removal to deal with the speed of decks like Goblins, potentially the white. And also just, mass removal. It's mass and it's removal. You play it. Last Kiss is too much mana. If you have 2 medallions out, it only costs 1, and that would be hilarious in that case. But 2 damage to target creature and gain 2 life, so basically we can remove a creature of 2 toughness or less and gain a little bit of life from it. It is instant speed, which is great. I don't love it. I don't love it. I don't play it. Okay, Liliana Spectre is a really good card. It's 3 mana. It flies, and it makes opponents discard. In any multiplayer format, you need to run this card. This card goes back into the deck in Two-Headed Giant. It is absolutely necessary in Planescape because it does it to every opponent. which triples or doubles or triples the value of the card. Just like with Exsanguinate, which also, I don't know if I mentioned this, this has to be in your deck. Both copies go in any multiplayer format. In 1v1, I don't love this card. It doesn't directly, because we're not playing discard. If we were playing Degenerate Black, if we had enchantments to support this and stuff, then absolutely you play this card. In this, he's really just a 2/1 flyer that has a little bonus tapped on, because when they select the card they discard, it's usually, unless you engineer a situation where they only have one card left in their hand, in which case you're not getting the maximum value out of your flyer, they're just going to discard a card they don't really need. Sometimes you'll get lucky and they'll have to choose between several things they want. In my experience, that's not normally what happens. Normally they just discard a land, draw another one the next turn, and kind of forget that Liliana Spectre has ever played. I remove it from the 1v1 version of the pile. Murder. This is the catch-all. This will remove the creature. If your opponent has a creature on the table and you're having problems with it, just play murder. You can murder it. There's 4 copies. I like 4 copies. Some people probably go down to 3. I just don't see it. This card is too versatile. It's not the best card. Obviously, for 3 mana, is much less desirable. You would rather have given the mana cost, you'd rather have go for the Throat or probably even Doomblade. Even though those have restrictions on what they can destroy, but those cards aren't available in this game, or at least for this pile. I guess Doomblade is in Exalted. Those cards aren't available for this pile, so Murder's what we got. Murder's what we're going to use. I do notice the extra point of mana, especially considering that it's another black. It's not like it's 2 colorless and we could reduce it all the way down with the Jet Medallions. Murder does become a bargain if you've got one of those medallions on table, though, since you are mono, 2 mana to destroy target creature is a pretty good deal. I run all 4. There you go. Where's the point where I'm going to put these other cards back here to talk about? I think I can fit everything in there now. So, I think I planned that pretty much perfectly. Underworld Dreams. This is another card that should go into potentially goes into the multiplayer format of this deck, because it does affect all opponents equally. In Two-Headed Giant, for this to do 2 damage a turn is great. It clocks the opponent. In 1v1, it's just not enough. For 3 mana, we have way too many things to play at 3 mana. It's really crowded at that 3 mana spot. Well, it won't be once we're done, but I'd rather, I don't find myself wanting to play this right away, and if you don't play it right away, it doesn't do what it's designed to. This card needs to come out as early as possible and just keep damaging your opponent. I have actually won games with it, so I can appreciate how strong it can be, and if you get 2 of them on the table, it's pretty terrible for your opponent. That's where you can start doing things like playing Sign in Blood on them to make them take 6 damage, using it as a nuke against the opponent. So definitely, if you really like this card, I think you can play it, because I have won games with it. I pull it out just for space considerations. Not this guy, though. This is one of the most efficient creatures ever printed. Flying, Death Touch, and Lifelink. What? 2/3? He's got a little extra. He's got an extra point of defense there that makes him really dangerous. Because he doesn't trade. Does not trade with 2/2 type flyers, of which there are a lot. He is Death Touch, though, so he will trade with any flyer, no matter how big it is. And Lifelink. This guy can keep you going by himself in some situations, just by adding that Lifelink back in. Especially if your opponent feels pressure and has to block him. He can really feed your life total and keep you going. So this guy is essential. This guy doesn't do anything. He's 3/2. He's 3. But he doesn't do anything. He has no abilities. I don't generally play any creatures that have no ability other than just coming out. So I'm not going to change my policy for that guy. Alright, Befoul. More removal. Also destroys land. This can be really helpful. The land destruction part of it, not always helpful, but it definitely can be. It's effective against the Exalted deck if they only bring out one of Plains or Swamp and then are kind of loaded on the other, because they really only need 1 colored mana of black, except when they get to the most expensive cards in the deck. And the same thing for white. But if you can deprive them of that color, then it shuts them down completely. There really aren't any specialty lands in this game, so that you don't end up using that second feature as much But it does destroy non-black creatures as well, and it destroys them, and they can't be regenerated. So there are specific creatures. Again, in Exalted, you can get rid of that duty-bound dead. I think there are a couple other creatures that regenerate, but I cannot think of them off the top of my head. Regardless, Befoul, I think it's a strong card. We can get it down to 2 mana with the medallions. It does synergize with those. It is sorcery speed. It's not ideal. I keep both of them in, and you know, maybe we'll talk about it at the end. Here's this guy. He's too expensive, but he is good. Obviously, you like flying creatures. Black is one of the few decks that actually has a lot of flying. Flying is relatively difficult for opponents to deal with in this game, so you can definitely make a case for running this guy. The case against it, though, is that he costs 4 mana, and he's 2/2. His ability is good. He flies, which is good. You know, it's just 4 mana for a 2/2 flyer. You're going to want to spend that mana on something else. When you have 4 open, you're going to want to spend that mana on something else other than this guy. Occasionally, you know what, I've won games with a couple of these guys coming in too, gaining me a couple life, doing a couple direct damage, and then being flying bodies. I have won games with them. You can make a case to play it. I do not. I do not play it. Dialogue Tutor. One of the promo cards. This card is extremely good. Costs 4. It's unfortunate that this black deck got saddled with the crappy tutor, because Exalted has the the demonic tutor, one of the original power cards from the alpha, not one of the power 9, but one of the stronger cards in the set. This card is so good though because it lets you search for anything you want, any card. You don't have to show your opponent. They have no idea what you've pulled out of there. You can use it to get one of the big black bombs that will win you the game. You can use it to get the Phyrexian Obliterator, which will win you the game. You can use it to fish out the Corrupt or an Exsanguinate for a finishing blow, or if you need to regain life, you know, a removal spell if you urgently need one. Diabolic Tutor in the deck. Icy Manipulator is much better on paper than it is in practice. It's too expensive. 4 mana. Once it's on table, it does start to return value. Not quickly enough, though. I just don't think that tapping things is effective enough anymore as a deterrent, especially not in a deck that just has hard removal. Like, we will just get rid of their creatures. Tapping lands is always fun. You can really shut down an opponent that way. It's another way to damage the Exalted deck in particular because it plays 2 colors. However, since all of the other decks are mono, I don't love it. When the expansion comes out and adds a bunch more dual color or tricolor, I think they're all dual color. But regardless, when more multicolored decks are in there, maybe you can find some room for Icy Manipulator. Or if there are certain threats you need to address with tapping. I don't know. For now, I think the hard removal will serve you better. I don't play it. Okay, Liliana's Shade costs way too much mana. 4 mana is too much. But you're going to play this card because it fits really well with the deck. She helps to ramp the deck. You're going to need swamps. If you have enough mana to play her, then you guarantee you have enough mana to play a 5-cost creature. Or not, depending on medallions, of course. Although if you have 2 medallions, then she's costed appropriately. The big problem with her is that she's less good than Nantuko Shade and costs twice as much. But she does pull a swamp out for you, and you are going to use her. So, but you don't want 4 of her. You would not like to see 2 of these in your opening grip over and over again. You want 1. You basically want to draw into 1, have 1 in your opening hand. That's fine. But 2, don't like it. Mutilate. This is the true mass removal. This just clears the field. It's rare that there's big enough creatures out fast enough to where you have this card and have the mana to play it, and it doesn't just wipe the field clear. This card is devastating. This is also, though, this feeds into kind of the deck strategy here with black. Let's talk about this again. So, as you can see, I've removed a ton of creatures here. We're down to 52% creatures, and we'll get lower than that, because I think I'm going to pull some more out of there, more than I am of spells. I think. I don't know. Maybe not. But what you're going to have on table at a given time with this is, if you have the Nighthawk, he's probably on the field, and if you have to wipe him out, that's a shame, but we got all these pump shades. That's what we have right now, is pump shades. You slow roll them. You don't put out like 2 or 3 pump shades unless you have to. But if you have 1 pump shade on the table, you can play a card like Mutilate, wipe out everything, and then play another pump shade. And the pump shade is enough of a threat to kill your opponent by itself. so it doesn't matter. You don't have to put out a swarm of creatures. So that lets you use this mass removal freely. That, to me, is just the philosophy behind the deck. Okay, Necrotal is amazing. He first strikes, he destroys a creature, and he is a guy. It's just a great package. 4 mana is a little steep for a 2/1 first strike, obviously, but pairing him with a kill spell, he's probably costed appropriately. I like him. I play him. Phyrexian Obliterator is... I would play this card even if it was just 4 mana for a 5/5 black trample. His other ability, on the other hand, is nuts. It's absolutely ridiculous. This makes him almost impossible for red deck to get rid of. Goblins fears this guy. You can't poke him. You can't. I mean, just there's so many bad things. I mean, blocking this guy is Also, he tramples. Don't forget that. So even if they've got like a fog bank wall or something, he can still come through for a little bit of damage. You can use him as a blocker. Don't forget that he is amazing as a blocker, because then you can pick how many permanents they're going to sacrifice. So yeah, this guy's really good. An absolute bargain at 4 black mana. Tendrils of Corruption. Here is some more hard removal. It's like a corrupt that goes at a creature instead of a player, but it also goes at instant speed. This is a really good card. This card will refill your life when you are in trouble. I definitely have won games with this card. In fact, I think I've posted games I've won basically because I have this card to kind of bolster myself up and get rid of a creature. Even a pretty large creatures this will get rid of. It's not obviously as good as just the hard murder type removal, but I think it's worth playing. Halo Hunter is actually not a terrible card. 3 defense is questionable, but he is Intimidate. And he does attack for 6. He's also only 5 mana, so he is evasive. Angels you will see in Exalted, in Ajani's Life Gain deck, and I believe there are some in Peacekeepers that nobody plays. So his secondary ability is rarely going to be helpful for you. However, this guy is a beat stick. Like, this guy just comes out and does some damage. I want to keep him in here. I don't think I'm going to be able to. I forget whether I had him in my build or not. I haven't seen him, so maybe not. But we'll come back to this guy, because I do want to keep him in here. I want there to be space for him. Okay, Incremental Blight. This is another card that's much better in multiplayer formats, where there probably will be 3 creatures available for you to massacre with it. In 1v1, the problem is this card can't be played if there aren't 3 valid targets. You have to have 3 different and valid targets to play this card at all. And it's 5 mana at sorcery speed, so it's going to end up clogging your hand for the most part. You don't really want to wait for them to play 3 creatures so you can play this. Now, granted, you can target one of your own as well, but I just don't think that this... I don't think you're going to be able to use this card every time you draw it, and to me, that means it can't make the deck. This guy is 5 mana, which is too much. 4/2, non-evasive. He doesn't really do anything. Putting a 2/2 black zombie creature, like, this is just... he doesn't fit with this deck. This is a zombie deck guy. And he'd be pretty good in a zombie deck, I suppose, but not in this deck. He just doesn't do anything for us. We're going to pull him out. Nightwing Shade is so expensive. If he cost less initially, maybe I'd play him. If he pumped for 1, maybe I'd play him. 5 mana to get a 2/2 on the field, and even though he is a Pump Shade, and even though he is evasive, which is just awesome. Like, this guy's good if you get him on the table. The problem is... that pump mechanic costing 2 mana means he's never going to get all that big. Even though he starts at 2/2, which is great, he's never going to get as big or as dangerous as your Nantuko Shade. So basically, he's just going to attack and try to kill him with his evasive attack. But I find when I have this guy in the deck, I don't play him very often, and when I do, he just gets killed. I don't like him. I don't use him. This card is ridiculous, especially if you get milled. Lose something off the top early, a big black bomb, and you can just bring it out even faster with Rise from the Grave. If they kill your Phyrexian Obliterator once, why not let them play round 2? I play 2 copies. I can't see any way you don't play this card. It even makes the creature black to make it, you know, marginally more difficult to remove. Veilborn Ghoul is... Okay, this card we got to talk about. Because I understand that recursion is an incredibly powerful thing in Magic. I understand that when you have a card that comes back, and then comes back again, and then comes back again, that is a huge resource advantage in this game. It allows you to ensure that you don't run out of tricks. You know, nothing is worse than reaching a point where your opponent is going to beat you, not because they've outplayed you, but because you're drawing swamps and they've drawn one dude who is just beating you down. If you're drawing swamps, however, you have unlimited access to this Veilborn Ghoul, to 2 Veilborn Ghouls. Here's the problem. Veilborn Ghoul can't block, so you can't use him, you can't bring him back and lay him down and just have him defend for you. Where that 4 attack and his recursion will be really strong. Now, obviously, he's strong on the attack too, but there's no trample, there's no haste, and it says whenever a swamp enters the battlefield under your control, you may return Veilborn Ghoul from your graveyard to your hand. So, since there's no haste, you're gonna lay a swamp, then pay 5 to put this guy down, so that he can attack next turn. Well, if they're pressuring you with like an Inferno Titan or something, this guy does nothing. Okay, that's a very specific example, I understand, but I just, like, you have 10 mana down to play both this guy? I don't think this guy is ever going to end up helping you. I think that he looks a lot better. Like, I think you see that recursion ability, that landfall ability, and you're thinking, yep, recursion, gotta play him. But then if you read this card, I don't think he's ever going to help you. I don't think he's ever going to help you, so I do not run him. Goodbye. Corrupt, on the other hand, is must play. If you're targeting a creature with this, you're probably gonna lose the game. But this is one of the great finishing moves for black. It's just hit him in the dome with a Corrupt, or just as a move to salvage yourself, hit them, cause a huge life swing, refill your life pool. You got to play Corrupt. You have to play Corrupt. Dread, promo card. Promo cards for this deck were very strong. They were pretty strong for most of the decks, but this deck, this is quite the card. Fear, in case you have forgotten, is the old school version of Intimidate. It is specific to black, so instead of if they have to block it with a black or artifact creature. His second ability is so underrated. And people that don't read Dread, you see this happen where your opponent hasn't read this card, doesn't really understand what it does, and they accidentally swing, hit you, lose a valuable creature, and then they get replaced by the AI. Better players obviously won't do that. He gets shuffled back into your library if he dies, so that's can be helpful. It means that you can't get him on the field with Call from the Grave, which is unfortunate, but yeah. He's a really good card, though. You play him, of course. Grave Titan is... I mean, all 5 of the Titans. Frost, dramatically less so than the others, probably. But all 5 of the Titans are pretty good cards. Pretty ridiculous cards. And this... I think this one and Inferno are the best ones. Although Sun Titan can be brutal. Grave Titan... The thing is, though, that he comes down... He says Death Touch. He comes down with 2 friends. That's 10 on the board. Just from, it's 6 mana is not a lot to pay for a 6/6 Death Touch and 2 friends. Also, 4 colorless, so he can come down for as little as 4 mana in this deck. And once he's on the table, if they can't get rid of him immediately, it just gets worse. It gets worse every single turn when he turns sideways and more friends come out. There is no card that just... I mean, this guy is the apocalypse. If they don't have a removal spell, some way to deal with him right away, this guy will end the game, and it will end quickly. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. Oh, God. Okay, Hellcarver Demon. This guy is the equivalent of Mighty Casey coming up for the last at-bat of the game. He swings, he swings, he strikes out. This guy is big. He's 6'6" flying, so let's, 6'6" evasive is very strong. There's not a lot of cards in the air that can compete with this guy. When he swings, if he hits them, he destroys your side, your hand, all of your permanents. That's all your land, all your enchantments, all your creatures, everything except for him. And then you can look at the top 6 cards of your yard and possibly put stuff in for free. It just reeks of desperation. I understand that if this guy is in play and it hits them for 6, you're probably going to be in a decent spot. But if they then have some way to remove him, you're kind of SOL. You've lost a ton of, pretty much all of your ability to come back into the game. I agree that in theory, if your black bombs all happen to be on the top of the deck, like if Master Worm and Rune-Scarred Demon and Zathrid Gorgon are on top, then yeah, great. Grave Titan. But if that doesn't happen to be what's on top of your deck, like suppose there's 4 swamps and a murder and another removal card, cards that you would have liked to have in your hand possibly, but are useless using this guy. I don't think... I guess you could cast like removal spells, but if they let this guy hit them, then those removal spells are probably immaterial. I definitely see the potential for this card. I can't. I guess I'm too risky for us to run it. Sorry, Hellcarver Demon. Master Worm. This guy is great. Another creature that is mass removal as well. Absolute anathema to goblins and tokens. This guy potentially has a win condition against goblins or tokens, where he comes in and kills so many guys that their life total gets pinged for every creature that dies. However, that second ability, that lingers. It's not just creatures that are killed by Master Worm's ability. Nope, it's creatures that die. So when you play this guy and then subsequently play a murder, that's 2 life. If you subsequently play a Reaver Demon, that's potentially a lot of life. So Master Worm is brutal, just really traumatizes the opponent. I think you got to keep him in there. Nightmare. A lot of people like Nightmare. I do not. Make up your own mind about Nightmare. Nightmare is very simple. Power, toughness equal number of swamps you control. Can come out cheaper with the medallion, but why would you want it to? I don't like it. I especially am not going to run 2 of them. It's crazy to me. Nightmare Incursion, another card that to me is much better in theory than it ends up being in practice. I just don't think you're ever going to notice this card's effect. It's too expensive, and I mean, wow, that really can brutalize certain decks. But most of these decks don't rely on, even 6 or 7 cards with Swamp. They don't really rely on those cards to win. All these decks are pretty durable as far as those kinds of removal. I mean, you could go through this deck, pull out Dread, the Grave Titan, the Master Worm, all the big creatures, and I could still kill you with Pump Shades and Murders. It could definitely take the bite out of... I totally understand it can really take the bite out of some decks. I think it's clunky and expensive, and I'd love to fit it in. Public Execution is actually better than you think. This can really save you if your opponent's coming with a huge swing. If they've got 4 goblins coming across with the pile driver, you execute the pile driver and all of a sudden you're taking 0. Basically buy you a turn. The problem is it's just so much mana. I think I'm going to keep 1 copy in for now. Zathrid Gorgon. This card is very interesting. Always like to see Death Touch with a big defense, so she's a very effective blocker. Really going to deter people from attacking you. Her tap ability is very dangerous because it shuts off the abilities of the creatures that it's used on and turns them into a colorless artifact. So with defenders, so you can eliminate your opponent's biggest offensive threat with one tap of this creature. She's a big, tough black creature, so she's pretty hard to get rid of. She's just slow, you know, with 6 mana and then having to tap the next turn. I want her in the deck. I don't think that there's room for her. But she's definitely... I think I play her in the 2-headed giant version of this deck. And, I mean, this is a good card. I wish I had room for her. Phage the Untouchable is not a good card. There are cards in this game that will put her into play, not from your hand, and you will lose the game when that happens. She doesn't get through. She has Death Touch, plus can't be regenerated, so that's good. No blocker can block her more than once, except for the Fog Bank. But nobody is going to let her do combat damage to them unless they don't have any blockers. Like, the only time when this card is going to win you the game is situations where you're already going to win the game. I don't think she helps you at all. And she can definitely ruin your day if a bad thing happens. Runescarred Demon is expensive. He's a 6/6 flyer, though, and he has a tutor effect on top of it. He's good. I play him. I like him. I like a lot of this expensive stuff in the back end for reasons that are, I don't know. Avatar of Woe, 8 mana is way too much to pay for pretty much anything, you could argue. It is a 6/5 evasive creature with that fear effect. 10 or more creature cards total in all graveyards. So that means this card is another one that's better in multiplayer, where you could potentially... Because in 1v1, there's no way this card's ever coming out for 2 mana unless you're being milled. In which case, it could definitely come out for 2 mana. The other way that this could come out if you're being milled is with Rise from the Grave. In which case, it's a strong card. Obviously, the ability to just tap for a destroy can't be regenerated is one of the most devastating removals around. A permanent removal spell that just does what needs to be done. I can't think of a time when I've successfully cast this card in 1v1. And that means I think it's gotta go. Grizzlebrand is a win. It's a game winner. 7/7 flying lifelink. Good. Oh, and then after we gain 7, we can just refill our entire hand. He's 8 mana. It's not too much to pay. The thing is, with those Liliana Shades and the medallions in here, you're going to end up with an excess of mana. And you're also going to hit your land drops more consistently because of the Shades, because you're going to draw at least one of those Liliana Shades. Also, this game loves to flood you with mana, so some of these expensive guys, you just end up having enough to cast them. And this guy is definitely worth casting. This guy, not as much. I understand Pestilence. You can win a game with Pestilence. And he's 7/6 flying. I think that I don't end up using his ability that much. I don't end up capitalizing on it. You know, if you really like this guy or really attached to that Pestilence effect, which, again, can be a game winner, can cause some mass removal if you're being overwhelmed. If you're being overwhelmed, this guy can help you in ways that Grizzlebrand can't necessarily, or Runescarred in particular can't necessarily help you with, although he can go get a mass removal card on his own, I suppose. I don't run Pestilence Demon, but, you know, if you like him better than Grizzlebrand or the Runescarred, then by all means do, or if you're just in love with giant black creatures. Reaver Demon is a mass removal card. He does not. It's worth noting that his effect does not go into effect if you play him from the yard with Call. So he is definitely a subpar choice for that particular card. Although he is still a 6/6 flyer, so that's still pretty good. He costs 8 mana. That's the problem with him. He costs 8 mana. If he costs 7 mana, I think he would be a reasonable card to play. If he costs 6 mana, he would be broken, and they probably wouldn't print that. Although there is Grave Titan. All that having been said, I like him one time. I like one copy of Reaver Demon in here. Plague Wind is just too much money. Too much mana. 9. They're just lines I won't cross. 8 is good. Reaver Demon has this same effect. Except I think he also destroys... Oh no, he is, yeah, just creatures. Oh, all non-black, non-artifact creatures, right. Which doesn't affect any of mine. and may not affect a lot of your opponents depending on what they're playing, but still. This card could be fun. Obviously, you like clear their field, don't clear mine. So if you've got the space for it, you know, throw it in. Why not? I cut it. So we go back and look. I think it's worth pointing out, I know 60 cards is how many cards your deck should be. I know that. There are so many good cards in 2013. I don't think it's blasphemous to play with 61 cards in your deck. Because what I would do in this situation is go down to 24 swamps. Actually, in this deck I might not, but in a lot of the cases, it's just the land that you would take out to make room for one of these cards. If I wanted to trim this to 60, I think Public Execution could be on the docket. Halo Hunter definitely could come out in theory. But I mean, six damage with Intimidate is pretty good. You could also make a case for pulling out of a foul. It's pretty expensive. I definitely wouldn't pull out any of this early stuff. I know I can see a case for not using Exsanguinate, which is less efficient than Corrupt. But since they only gave us one Corrupt, I like to have an additional source of face damage with a little recovery for me. Cards I'd like to fit in. I think I'd like to fit this card in. I can really see, you know, as I was talking about it, I was kind of talking myself into it rather than out of it. I kind of like to see this in play, just see how it does. I don't think I've ever actually run it, so what I might do actually is take out the Public Execution, and when I play this deck next, we'll just run this instead and see if I like it. I'd like to fit her in too. She's very dangerous, very dangerous. And I'd fit the Avatar of Woe in if I could. I love you, Avatar of Woe. It's one of my favorite creatures. I think I have like 3 or 4 of her. That just has always been unplayable, unfortunately. If I can't even find it in my heart to use the Avatar of Woe in Duels of the Planeswalkers, then it just must not be that good of a card. So we end with a lot less creatures than spells. I think I predicted that. We don't need more creatures. A lot of these black creatures, if you've got them out 1 or 2 at a time, it's probably enough to win. So this is just my thoughts and responses to every card in black, plus my cut of the deck. I think this is like 30 minutes long, so we definitely won't be adding any gameplay to the end of this video. Oh my god, this is 40 minutes long. This is going to have to be a 2-parter already. For Tremendous VD, this is Dr. Meat, signing off.